Good morning, everybody. Kathy, are we all set?
Give me 1 second, Stacy.
No problem. Just let us know whenever you're ready.
Stacy, we are ready.
Righty, great. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to call today's Public Safety and Health Committee meeting to order. It is Wednesday, June 30th, and we are continuing to meet virtually. And the best way to engage with us in our virtual environment is to visit the city's website at www.ci.missoula.mt.us/webcast. That will take you to the portal where you can sign up to join our committee meetings, as well as leave comment for items that are open for public comment. If you would like to give all members of City Council, share your thoughts with them, you can send us an email at council@ci.missoula.mt.us. or you can send us all a voicemail at 406-552-6012. That gets digitized and sent out to all of us. So even though we're still meeting virtually, there are lots of ways for the public to participate, and we encourage you to do so. Let's see, I'll do a quick roll call here. I am present. Chair Anderson, Mirta Becerra is here, John Contos is here, Heather Harp is present, Jordan Hess, I do believe, is still out, but maybe joining us this afternoon, but not here for today. Gwen Jones is present, Julie Merritt is not, Jesse Ramos is not present, Amber Sherrill is not present, Sandra Vasica is not present, and Brian von Lossberg is present, and Heidi West is present. All right, great. We do have approval of minutes from the last time we met, which was June 23rd, when we did the interviews for the local emergency planning committee. Are there any changes or amendments to the minutes? Heather's shaking her head no. All right, those minutes will stand approved. Let's see here. All right. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items that are under the purview of the Public Safety and Health Committee? If you have such comments to make, please feel free to raise your hand and we will allow you to make comments. Give you just a second. All right, appears not. So great. Well, we have one agenda item today, and it is an informational only item, and it is a presentation from Police Chief Jason White on the annual review that he has conducted from the department. And so I will turn it over to him to present, and I think that best probably would be to wait to hold questions at the end. Chief White, do you have a preference on that?
At the end would be fine. I'm going to work my way through the annual presentation, and if there's something that is just absolutely, you got to know right this second, jump in. If not, we can handle it all at the end.
Great. All right. Sounds good. All right, Chief, take it away.
Madam Chair, council members, thank you for giving me this opportunity. One of the police department's goals last year was to produce an annual report. And just from a historical perspective, the department had not in the past done an annual report that was made available to the public. And in order to better educate the community that we serve and to be transparent about the things that we do here within the police department, that was one of our primary goals. So I'm proud that we were able to to put an annual report together. We learned a lot during this process. We learned a lot of information that we do collect. We learned a lot about the information that we could do a little bit better in collecting. And we also learned about data that we just don't collect, that we're trying to figure out ways to collect so we can report on that and make improvements and continue to work in an effort to provide the most professional policing services and public safety we can to the city of Missoula. So with all of that, on June 1st of this year, we released that report to the public. It has been on our department's forward-facing public website since June 1st, and anyone and everyone has the opportunity to go through that report, review it, and get the information that we've provided. And I know, just for ease of conversation, we're not going to go word by word, paragraph by paragraph, but I'd like to spend a little time jumping into some of the highlights and go through that report. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen and we can work our way through that. So can everyone see that? Do I need to make it larger, smaller? Are we good?
Looks good on my end.
All right, so anyone can read my message, but basically what this report does is it highlights the exceptional work that the men and women of the Missoula Police Department has done. And I think that we are trying to provide a full 360-degree look at the police department. Most people just assume, based on contact with the police department or our visible presence, you normally just see patrol cars and officers in uniform. But and we do a lot of great work in that space, but there's also another administrative environment of professionals that provide support to the public and support to the uniformed side of the shop to make sure that we're able to go out and do that in the community. We wanted to highlight all of those things, and some of those things we'll touch upon as we go through. We wanted to highlight our mission statement, that we're a community-oriented agency committed to delivering professional police service to Missoula. We strive to improve the quality of life and of our citizens and the livability of our community. This is the basis by which we try to do our jobs. Our whole purpose here is to make sure that we are providing professional police services and we are improving the quality of life for our community. So the department is divided into 3 divisions: the detective division, the patrol division, and the administrative division. And we broke our report down based on those general divisions. The first one we'll highlight is the detective division, which has 20 sworn Missoula Police Department detectives, and we have 2 non-sworn transcriptionists. So our 2 transcriptionists, they day in and day out transcribe all of the interviews our detectives do with suspects and victims in order for us to be able to present the best case to the prosecuting authorities. So it is very busy. And from a global perspective, I want to get into case assignments. So this graphic here illustrates that we have seen an increase in the number of cases that our detectives are handling. And it's about a 12% increase over last year. And so in addition to there being more cases that our detectives work, and our detectives are primarily assigned felony cases. So they are focusing on the most serious of crime. And we can see that they've had a 12% increase. But at the same time, like everyone else in 2020, we were dealing with COVID-19 pandemic and the impact on our workforce. So you can see that we lost about 1,700 hours out of the detective division, which it basically amounts to about 1 full-time FTE. So we lost the ability to have someone work. and we had a 12% increase in cases. So needless to say, Detective Division is very busy. And I'm happy to say that with the pandemic behind us, that we shouldn't be losing those amount of hours going into this year. So we're hopeful for that. The other thing is in the Detective Division, like I said, they're the division that handles the most serious of offenses. And you can see that we have had, based on this graphic, a significant increase in the number of aggravated assaults. That represents a 39% increase in aggravated assaults. You also see that we had 2 additional homicides over last year for a total of 7. So these cases are extremely time intensive, and they represent the most serious and violent crimes that are occurring in our community. When we take a look at what's causing the aggravated assaults, what we're finding is that it is directly attributable to illegal drugs. So a lot of our aggravated assault cases stem from methamphetamine, first and foremost, followed by opiates. I know there's been some information pushed out by the state recently about overdoses in Montana and overdoses that have led to deaths. We experienced some of that last year as well. And luckily that trend's kind of subsided. I mean, fast forward into 21, we sent out a bulletin, a public safety bulletin just last month or earlier this month regarding the increase in overdoses and fentanyl that we were experiencing here. Unfortunately, that's playing out in our violent crime here in Missoula. So the question always becomes, what do you do about it? So we have officers assigned to the county drug task force. We have officers that work in conjunction with our with our federal partners to address the supply of drugs into our community. And we are doing a great job on that. But this is not an effort and a situation that we can just simply enforce our way out of. This has to be something that the community as a whole addresses, not only from our perspective and our partners in law enforcement, but there also needs to be the ability for people who have substance use disorders to get the assistance that they need. And we are working in multiple arenas in a collaborative manner in order to help expand that capacity. Part of that was through our Project Safe Neighborhood grant from the federal government that helps fund our enforcement task forces dealing with drugs. There was a grant given to a local nonprofit entity to stand up a substance use disorder clinic, and they are in the process of doing that. So not only are we working on enforcement, but we're also partnering where we can to help increase the capacity for people to get the assistance that they need in order to get them through their substance use disorder and hopefully back into a normal routine of life. So that's what we're working on, and we will continue to work on that because it causes all of us great concern when we see that our violent crime is increasing, and we can attribute it to something that we can tackle and address.
Chief White, it appears that Heather Harp has a question that she'd like to ask.
Yeah, go ahead. I with my sharing of screens, I don't get to see any hands.
Oh, no, that's fine. I'm happy to, yeah, she must have a clarifying question about the slide.
Yeah, thanks, Stacy. Chief White, you know, this is one of the most interesting pieces of information I think that we've seen for, or at least I have seen for a little bit. And I think it really underscores a lot of the problems that we face in our community. I can't help but think to a friend of mine who's a professor, Jim Caringi, over at the university in social work, who has informed me about adverse childhood experiences and how those particular hurdles really, I think, end up causing people to make choices, especially with heavy drugs, that they take to cope with those experiences of the past, and they, I think, just kind of perpetuate. So my question is, what are there anything particular in amongst your teams that you're working on that can actually get to the root cause of what those experiences are, so that they don't go down to the extreme of becoming violent offenders?
So yeah, we rely on our provider network to do that, and that is where that grant money is going out of our PSN, is to hopefully address some of those issues at that younger age in order to figure out and to help prevent that from happening. I know from the meetings and that I've been to that has been topics of discussion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Chief, we'll let you keep going here. And
so another piece to deal with our illegal drug use is our participation in the 4th Judicial District SMART Court. So SMART, as you can see there, stands for Strategies of Maintaining Addiction, Recovery, and Treatment. So this is a voluntary therapeutic program that is run through the court, and it is a collaboration of, you can see the Missoula County Attorney's Office, U.S. Attorney's Office, the Public Defender's Office, Missoula Police Department, Missoula Sheriff's Department, and also professionals that provide services. And these are people that have non-violent felony drug cases. So these are the folks that have the substance use disorders, that have found themselves involved in the criminal justice system. And we work collaboratively to try to get people hooked into resources so they can deal with their addiction issue and get themselves back out of the judicial system. So there are weekly meetings that people from the Missoula Police Department attend in order to discuss each one of these cases. So it is a very high touch program that is designed to help people succeed in their addiction recovery. This is a simple breakdown by month of when the violent crimes occur. You can see that in 2020, our largest spike was in August, and again in November. Unknown why. We have notable cases. I won't go through them, but basically these are some of the higher profile cases that occurred in the community where our detectives worked tirelessly to solve. And you'll see a lot of collaborations that occur within the police department with the different divisions, as well as outside with, for example, in this one, you see University of Montana Police Department, who has a detective co-located with us here at the Missoula Police Department to handle any sex assault related cases that occur on the university. The other case of highlight is the Siobhan McGinnis cold case murder from 1974 that we were able to solve in 2020 to bring some peace and resolution to her family. The next division is Patrol Division, and this is this is our largest and most visible division in the police department. And you can see that we've got quite a few officers, corporals, and sergeants assigned to it, but kind of walk through it. In 2020, we were broken down into 4 patrol divisions or zones, 1, 2, 3, and 4. As I've discussed with you and the public in the past, based on the staffing study that was finalized last year in February, we adjusted those to 12 patrol divisions. So curious to see how that impacts our ability, and we're looking forward to providing that information as we work through the remainder of 2021 to see how these patrol zones are working out as a function of workload for our officers and our ability to respond to calls for service. So the pandemic did a lot of things to drive down our calls for service. So calls for service, other than traffic stops, are generally where a member of the public has either called our front desk, which I'll explain that a little bit in a little bit, or have called 911 and have asked for an officer to respond to handle a situation. You can see that there's been a pretty big drop in our calls to service across the board. The only two areas that have gone up in 2020 over 2019 were suspicious activity or persons to be removed. Persons to be removed are the criminal trespass, where someone is on someone's property and the property owner or someone in control has asked us to remove them from the property because they have not voluntarily left. So other than that, everything else pretty much dropped. But one of the things that we have learned as we've worked through that staffing study is that calls for service isn't the sole indicator of workload for police departments and our officers, and particularly in our patrol. So it is a factor in the number of officers we need and the number of zones that we have, but there's also a lot of other activities, community-oriented policing, reaching out, those kinds of things that aren't captured in calls for service. And we're trying to figure out, this is one of those growing pains that I explained at the beginning, where we're trying to figure out a better way to capture that data in order to accurately report the full function of what happens in patrol. It's real easy to get calls for service because that goes through dispatch, and there's a computer-aided dispatch system that captures these things. But there isn't something in place to capture all of those other things that go into the global workload of our officers on patrol. So those are things that we're considering and trying to work through in order to better serve the community and be able to report back on that. So one of the things that we wanted to highlight were traffic collisions that occur in the city. And although the number of traffic collisions was significantly down over the last couple of years, in 2020, there weren't a lot of people out and about driving around due to the pandemic. So there was a lot of folks that were working from home, and we believe that that's probably going to continue into the future. But nonetheless, we still have a large number of traffic collisions, and we wanted to highlight the top 10 intersections in the city where our collisions occur. And you can see that the top 9 all have one common street associated with it, and it's Reserve, whether it's North Reserve or Reserve. And we all know that that is the busiest traveled roadway in the state of Montana. And we need to figure out the types of collisions that are occurring in these intersections so we can assign our traffic unit and our patrol units to better address what's going on there. But at least now we have that information, and we can make educated and informed decisions about how we're going to go out there and address some of these things. And if there are roadway improvements that could be designed, then we can have the conversation with our roadway stakeholders in order to help address that going into the future. And then we also, one of the things that we learned through this process was having the ability and increasing our ability to do crime maps. And so with our traffic collisions, we were able to pull that data and be able to generate what we call a heat map as to where our collisions are occurring. So we're going to start working on trying to expand that capability. And most importantly, we want to, as we get into being able to provide more data to our officers, we want to be able to put this type of information in the patrol cars so our officers can know, beyond traffic collisions, what types of crimes and reported crimes and calls for service have been occurring in their assigned zones, so they can specifically address those concerns going into the future. So we are We are working on upgrading the technology in our patrol cars in order to be able to provide this information. And it would be updated on a daily basis based on the CAD dump information into our system in order to give us real-time information for our officers to address things in the field. We have
Chief White, sorry to interrupt again. It does. Heidi West has a question.
Yep.
I'm guessing on this previous slide. Heidi.
Yeah, sorry, just real quick question. Does it distinguish at all between like vehicle on vehicle crashes or vehicles that involve pedestrians in these top areas?
So that's part of the struggle of information and the types of data that we don't immediately have access to. We're kind of reliant on a state system to provide us that, and it's a little difficult to get that kind of information from. So that is something that we are definitely looking forward to trying to figure out, so we can be a little bit better informed to see, like I said, what types of collisions these are, so we can better enforce, primary collision factors to keep these things from happening. So,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah. So we have a couple different specialized teams that we highlighted in here. One is our street crimes unit, and this is based out of patrol, and it's 2 officers that work in a plainclothes environment, and they deal with a little bit more of the higher profile, higher risk situations in patrol, and do a little bit more directed enforcement at our drugs and our violent crime. So you can see that these stats are just for the street crimes unit. That last year they seized 12 pounds of methamphetamine, 73 grams of heroin, some marijuana, some mushrooms, and 5 firearms. So that is not an indication of all of the drugs and illegal items that we seized. But this just represents that unit. They are very proactive and work with a lot of our law enforcement partners to address the high risk needs. We have a canine unit with 2 canines, and they had 66 deployments. That doesn't mean that we sent the dog out 66 times on a person apprehension. That just means that during the course of the year, 66 times they went out specifically, other than just their normal patrol duties, just to do drug sniffs, person and article searches, and those types of things. The administrative division is fundamentally the support division for the entire department. And one of the things that is a part of administrative division is our Office of Professional Standards. So our Office of Professional Standards is run by a lieutenant who serves as our primary investigator for citizens' complaints and internal investigations. And, like I said in the past, the department's not publicly put this information out before, but we wanted to make sure that it was included in our annual report. So you can see here where the number of citizens' complaints in 2020 were a total of 68 allegations. So allegations are a little bit different than incidents that caused an investigation. So we could have one incident and there could be 3 allegations associated with that same incident. So in the text, you'll see that we had 38 incidents that generated at least one allegation of a complaint. So that led to a total of 68 allegations. So what I want to share is, if you take the global activity of public contacts that we had in 2020, that amounts to about 55,136 contacts that we've had with the public. And of those 55,136, there were 38 of those incidents that led to a complaint against one or more of our officers. That is a 0.06%. So it is, not even 0.1% of our contacts resulted in some form of complaint against one of our officers. I think, any and all complaints, we take seriously. They are investigated, and we'd like to get to zero, but at such a small percentage, I think that our officers are demonstrating their professionalism. I think they're demonstrating their compassion and are demonstrating their willingness to work with whoever they're in contact with to resolve that situation. So what happened with those 68 complaints and how did they fall? So you can see the number of complaints over here on this side and what the categories of those are. So of those 68 complaints, there were 2 for bias or racial discrimination. And if I scroll to the bottom here, you can see that over the last couple of years, we have 1 or 2 per year. And you can see that the 2 for 2020, one was exonerated and one was closed with a no finding, which basically means that the officer was not in violation of violating someone's rights and or the incident did not actually occur as alleged. So there's that information. And if anyone wants to know what the definitions of exonerated and no findings, we cut and paste this out of our policy that's available online and included it in the reports so people don't have to jump back and forth. The other thing that we wanted to report on was use of force. So once again, there were over 55,000 incidents that we handled, and 210 of them resulted in some type of force incident occurring, and there were 491 total use of force actions. So you're like, well, what does that mean? So one of 2 things could have occurred. An officer tried a lower level of force, and it did not result in compliance, and the officer had to escalate, or there were multiple officers on scene that also engaged in a use of force at that particular incident. So you'll see this primarily here in the firearms pointed category. So for example, there's a lot of agencies that only report on whether or not an officer discharged his or her firearm during the course of duty. We believe that it is more transparent and provides better information to also capture when officers display their firearms in a manner in which trying to gain verbal compliance with someone. So these are the incidents where you're thinking a felony traffic stop at the termination of a pursuit, those types of things where they are high risk situations where an officer needs to gain immediate compliance with someone who has presented a serious public safety threat. So when you see 180 firearms pointed, a lot of these high risk stops, there are 2 or 3 officers on scene. So we take a count for each one of those officers displaying his or her firearm. So that one incident may generate 3 firearms pointed counts. We just want to make sure that we are capturing that information. The same thing kind of down there in the taser deployed, taser pointed categories, where we are displaying the taser as a show of force, not necessarily a use of force, even though we capture the data and use it as a use of force. You can see that the highest category is personal weapons. So these are these would be strikes and or anything above a control hold. So grabbing someone, those types of things. So that is which is, at the very, very low end of a use of force spectrum. So you can see that if you take a look at all of our use of force, the primary type of force used by our officers is at the lowest end of the spectrum. And I think that once again demonstrates our officers' professionalism, their willingness to de-escalate, to handle things at the lowest level possible in order to make the situation safe and resolve the incident. Our training unit. So, 2020 was a little bit difficult in trying to get some training going, and we asked for and council supported us in getting some enhancement to our training budget. So we had one half of this reporting period with that enhanced budget carrying over obviously into the beginning of 21. So what we can do and show you for the end of 2020 is we had 6,742 hours of in-house and post-certified training in 2020. If you compare that to 2019, there was only about 4,200 hours of training provided to our staff as ongoing professional development. So despite the fact that we were dealing with capacity restrictions and ability to travel and send our officers to various courses, we were still able to increase the number of hours for our officers in professional development. Some of the course highlights for the end of 2020, you can see here some crisis intervention, some stress management, some field operations, background investigations. Calming the fire was a de-escalation course, and a lot of the courses like implicit bias and additional de-escalation classes, because of the lift of restrictions, we pushed into 2021. So those are all occurring. Actually, they've all have occurred in the beginning of 2021. So we'll report out on that. One of the pain points that we discovered in putting together and trying to figure out how many hours are going where is we have a very old, antiquated training record system, and we have a little bit newer than antiquated training system. So we have two record systems that we are trying to combine in order to get this information. So it is difficult for us to actually say exactly how many hours an individual officer received in particular categories. We can say that we sent, 5 officers, 10 officers to a 40-hour crisis intervention team training and calculate that, but I can't go in and just pull up a crisis intervention team training and get a list of all the officers and the total number of hours. So that is one of our pain points that we're trying to figure out in order to better report to you as council and to you as the public where those training efforts are going. So that is something that we'll work on and hopefully improve for our 2021 annual report. Like I said, we wanted to highlight everything that goes on in the police department and some of the things that a lot of people don't really think about. And a lot of people don't know that we have 4 records folks, and they process, if you combine all of these incidents, cases, accidents, and all of the reports that come to them, you're looking at 70,000 plus records that come through a system that 4 people have to manage. And then out of all of those, we're required by state and federal law to provide crime reports to the Montana Board of Crime Control, which does get pushed, to the FBI as part of the national reporting system. So of all of that, they have to pull out about 9,600 records that get submitted. And we have to do that by the 10th of the month the month before has to get to Montana Board of Crime Control. And then they verify those records. And if something's wrong, we have to fix it. But, you know, that's a lot of data for our 4 records clerks to have to provide and be accurate about. And in addition to processing all of that, they also handle all of the dissemination of our records to prosecuting authorities, to the public that request records. So, you know, in addition to all of that, they also processed about 4,500 records that went back out to the public. We have a crime scene technician that goes out and handles all of our crime scene evidence collection. We received a grant last year from the federal government to get a new Faro scanning device. So it allows us to do 3D representations of scenes. And this machine's fast. It's much better than the one we had in the past. So we are able to clear scenes more quickly, get roadways opened, return things to normal a little bit more quickly. And we have much more robust data from each scene. We have a digital evidence technician, and he's super busy. I mean, if you take a look at, you know, I kind of highlighted here, we have 102,000 videos on our system, and we take up 70 terabytes of hard drive space. That is a lot of data. So, you know, as we increase our body-worn camera program, which we did last year as a part of the budget enhancement, we're just going to continue to see that rise. So we have to start looking at the ability for us to store those videos. Obviously, we can't change our retention periods because we need to make them available for both prosecution and defense. So, you know, there's just, it is a burden, but I think the overall safety, transparency, and protection that body-worn cameras provide is definitely something that we will just have to sort through and work our way through. Every time that there is an incident that needs to be prosecuted and there is digital evidence associated with it, for example, body-worn camera footage, dash cam footage, all of that has to be processed by our digital evidence technician and batched into a consumable file and sent over. So you can see that these were the discovery requests by the city attorney's office and county attorney's office that we've had to process. It's a big job. We have volunteers that range in a wide variety of life and backgrounds, and they come help us out on the regular. 2020 put a pretty serious damper to that program, just simply because we weren't able to invite them in to do all the things that they normally do. So we highlighted some of the things that they have traditionally done for us, and they're you know, they're all angels. They really help us out. So you can see that our volunteer numbers dropped and our volunteer hours dropped. But you know, the moment that we were able to open City Hall back up and get our volunteers back here, you know, I walk over to the area where they're working. We're seeing a lot of folks come back in, and it's great to have them back and helping us out. They help us with our found bicycles. You know, I think the number of found bicycles in 2020 is more attributable to our lack of volunteer hours. I think we all see abandoned found bikes all over town, and we do our best to collect them up as best we can and return them to their rightful owners. We have a front desk area, and they are open 24 hours a day, and they handle a lot of things other than just walk-ins. So you can see that they handled over 45,000 telephone calls in 2020. That's a lot of telephone calls to come into the police department. And we also give them the ability to take some of the minor reports that don't need a full officer response or investigation. And they took over 2,900 reports. So they are, we have 1 or 2 of our front desk folks working per shift, and they're busy and they deal with a lot of things. One of the things that we did this last year as part of the enhanced training budget was, they're the frontline contact for a lot of people that come through into our lobby. And we started giving them de-escalation training and the ability to have some tools to help help people when they come in to the police department and are agitated or fired up, to give them, since they're our frontline personnel, the ability to try to de-escalate that situation the best they can prior to an officer responding. So trying to give them needed job skills as well. And the last page was, we normally have the ability to have an award ceremony for our officers that receive awards for going above and beyond the normal call of duty, but we weren't able to do that last year. So we wanted to make sure that they receive some recognition for their exceptional work. We had 3 promotions last year. Captain Jake Rosling is in charge of our patrol division now. Sergeant Mike Kammerer was in patrol, and Corporal Mitch Lang came out of detectives and went into patrol as well. And we also listed all of the new officers and non-sworn staff that we hired this last year in a variety of capacities. So that's it. I was hoping to keep it a little shorter so we can have some discussion, but I'm open to fielding any questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Chief. Appreciate this. And again, this is available for the public on the website. I looked at it beforehand. I do have a couple questions, and then I see a queue lining up of my fellow council members. So I noticed when you, I was taking notes, and when you were highlighting the various calls for service, the one thing I noticed was the drop in calls under the suicidal persons category. So in 2019, there was 711 calls in that category, and 2020, 677. Not a huge drop, but I mean, it's a big number. And I'm wondering, I actually would have thought that number would have gone up given some of the struggles our community members had with, the trauma of the last year that we've all gotten through. So do you have any insight into that? I mean, I know that there's a lot of community partnership working on suicide prevention, getting crisis intervention, the mobile crisis unit. I mean, they're just trying to create more wraparound services, but just, I was surprised by that number and wanted to hear what you had thought about that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know why that dropped. The creation of the mobile support team would still generate, if someone is suicidal, depending upon the circumstances, if they were in immediate harm's way for themselves or to the public, the mobile support team has not gotten to the point that they would be the sole resource deployed to those. There would still be a call for service to the police department to make sure that the individual is safe, the community is safe, and the mobile support team is safe. And then there would be a warm handoff if there's no longer a need for the police department's presence there. And I believe those calls also still go to the fire department as well. As we mature the mobile support team, then I think that there will be some transition in that going into the future. But at this point in time, there's still a police department response.
Great, thanks for that. And then with the firearms pointed statistic, how is that? How are you capturing that information?
It is at this point in time, it is self-reported, and then also as part of the review that sergeants do for reports, they will make sure that there is a use of force incident that is documented for that.
Great, thanks so much. I'll pass. I have a couple more questions, but I'll let other members go and we can come back. First in the queue is I have Ms. Jones.
Thanks. Good to see you, Chief White.
Thank you.
Great presentation. It's really interesting to kind of start to see the different categories and the trends. So I appreciate that greatly. But my question is a little bit mundane. I just wanted you to go over how many officers you are budgeted for, how many you actually have in those spots currently, and if you could tie it in. I know you did the staffing study a year or so ago. Your anticipation looks like we're holding steady and we're good for a period of time. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, so we're allocated 116 officers. And last year was an exceptionally high retirement year. We had a lot of officers that were that had reached the end of their career naturally. And so we hired 18 new officers in 2020. And all of those were a function of retirements or finally the fulfillment of the positions the department was given by council in previous budget years. So, and getting them through the academy and hired and so on and so forth. So, but that being said, based on those retirements and the way that law enforcement officers are trained in the state of Montana through this state academy and only being able to run 3 academies through there a year, we don't always get allocated the number of positions that we need in order to fulfill our vacancies. So sometimes we run a little short until we are able to get new officers into the academy. The academy does a great job of, we have an assigned number for Missoula Police Department because we are the second largest police department in the state. So we have dedicated positions and sometimes we exceed that and we work with the academy and they give us extra slots when they can, but that doesn't always work out for us because there are, other departments across the state that have a need as much as we do. So that goes to say that we are usually running anywhere from 2 to 5 personnel short in order to keep up. So for example, I have 2 current vacancies now. I have 2 current vacancies now. I have 2 retirements tomorrow. So that takes us to 4. So come July 1st, I'll be down 4 positions. The next academy isn't until September. So we're working through the hiring process and I have great candidates. We're not hurting in the recruitment department. So far, we're still able to find great candidates. It's just, I can't hire them until the end of August to get them into a September academy in order to backfill.
Follow up, Ms. Anderson?
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks for that information and painting that picture for us. It really does help. With the staffing study, my recollection was the recommendation was in general, we've got the right number, which I know you would like to have that filled, but that's a separate issue. But it was more a question of staffing times and where to put more personnel on certain shifts. And that's still, you haven't seen a change in terms of the facts that you have in front of you that you would be changing your opinion on that at this point, it sounds like.
At this point in time, no. I think we're, if we're fully staffed, that's the impact to us. As long as we are able to fill all of those patrol slots, then we're doing great. It's when we have those gaps, when we have some retirements and can't get someone in there that causes us to have those pain points.
Thanks.
Great. Next up, I have Miss West.
Thanks. So I have a comment about maybe adding some information in the future to our report around missing people in our community. I think as a Facebook user, I often see things pop up of, you know, kids that are missing or adults that are missing or elderly folks in our community that are missing. And most of those, of course, get resolved fairly quickly and there's an update. But then there are cases that aren't resolved. And I don't feel like there's a great way of even, you know, as a citizen of knowing which ones aren't resolved and are, and, you know, which ones the police is looking for information on. And so I think this could be a tool to highlight maybe some, like I saw a thing about a girl that was last seen at the MCT bus stop, for example, and I don't know if she's ever been located or who to contact if I knew something. And I think this could be a really great tool to maybe just tack something like that onto this, both to show what cases are resolved, but also to connect people to resources if they happen to know something and who to contact. So,
Okay.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Here's my list of things that I want to add to next year. Abandoned vehicles, that's a quality of life issue. More information on CIT, more information on our business improvement district officers, our school resource officers, our quality of life sergeant and the work that he does, more information about our digital forensics program, our traffic unit, our misdemeanor follow-ups, and I just added missing people to that. So, you know, these are all things that go back to, we had to figure out how to get some information and stats together. So I keep that posted on my monitor, and anytime something pops up, it gets written on that piece of paper.
Great. Mr. Von Lossberg.
Thanks. Afternoon, Chief. That's a great list that you just rattled off. And I want to say thanks for not just doing this, but being open to having that list and considering things for the future. I don't think we can do enough in this regard. And it's really, I'm really grateful. I was curious with the numbers, which I'm grateful to see the ones we've got. Does that provide you an opportunity to do any sort of benchmarking against, I guess, other communities or with other communities, or benchmarking of any sort? I'm always curious. You know, data is great. Data in context is even more helpful. And curious if you have any thoughts or if there's uses to that you didn't describe.
So I appreciate you bringing that up. We have to be able to compare, you know, same to same. So, you know, if we look out across the community and we come up with, you know, there's usually a per capita rate for aggravated assaults and those types of things. So when it comes to that, yes, we will be able to compare ourselves to any other jurisdiction that collects that information, and, you know, a comparison as to the safety. I'm pretty confident that we have a very safe community here in Missoula. We have some issues that we can address, and we're working on those. But for the most part, we do enjoy a very low crime rate, particularly when it comes to the violent crimes. But yes, those are things that we can consider as we move forward.
Thanks.
Ms. Becerra.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Very useful information, and I hope that we can get this out to the community so that they too can see all the work that is happening in the community by the police department. I too wanted to bring up the issue of missing children and women, but I also would like to see, if possible, our collaboration with tribal entities and how missing and murder Indigenous people are part of the equation for our city. And then I guess one question that I have is, where does the domestic violence calls for service or where does that live? Is that part of the aggravated assault number that you provided, or where does that live in terms of the numbers that you gave us?
Yes, so the felony violent domestic violence falls within that aggravated assault category that I gave you. What isn't in there is the misdemeanor assaults that would include the lower level of those. So we don't have really the ability to parse out the difference between whether or not it was a domestic violence incident or a different act of violence without doing a hand search of each one of those records.
Interesting. Okay.
And as far as our work in the missing persons world, particularly and the indigenous persons, myself and our primary detective that handles these matters, we've attended several meetings with the Consolidated Tribe, and the tribe was selected by the United States Department of Justice to be a pilot program for the entire nation based on the pre-existing relationships that are within our region, which includes Missoula Police Department. And so we've attended several meetings and to work on developing response protocols that would lay out a foundation for everyone in this area, whether or not the incident occurred on tribal lands or within the city of Missoula, that we all operate and function and report through the same mechanism, so we all could be on the same page to resolve those matters. So that is a national effort that we are currently participating in. Assuming that there's positive results from this, then the United States Department of Justice intends to roll that out to every tribe in the nation.
That's great to hear. Thank you. And yeah, I think we should highlight those achievements. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that question, Ms. Becerra. And I would love to hear more about that, Chief White, if there's a time for you to come in and present to that, because I think it's really important. And I'm glad that we are taking part in that pilot project and hopefully, put some good things in place to share with other jurisdictions and tribes. So we are just a couple minutes past the hour. We have one final question. I have one question, so we'll go to Ms. Harp and then I'll wrap up and then we will get a lunch break. So Ms. Harp.
Thanks, Stacey. Chief White, I really appreciate you coming in today and really kind of pulling the curtain back, if you will, and providing some transparency around what goes on in our community, whether it is extremely violent or just everyday kind of calls for service. I know you know that every police department across the nation suffers from a lack of trust in police departments today. And in order to overcome that, being able to be forthright and be able to share the data, and to Brian's point, with the context is absolutely critical. So I know we all look forward to having more updates and more data, but also being able to put it into the perspective that we need so that we can, I guess, address the underlying reasons why we have the crimes that we do instead of just putting the Band-Aid fixes on it. So very much appreciate you coming in today and sharing your report.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ms. Harp. So I guess in wrap up, Chief, I'll just kind of quickly throw my couple questions. You can answer them and then we can go. But you have mentioned a couple of times in your presentation about data collection, and it does seem to be a struggle. I think you used the words antiquated and somewhat antiquated at two different times. So curious on kind of the horizon for that, because I appreciate that you're trying to, create these reports, measure the data, put benchmarks, create transparency, but it seems like you have some struggles internally to kind of best collect that. So wondering if that's going to be a budget item we might see, and if that also, I know that there's some CARES money available for one-time purchases around a variety of things. So curious about that, because it seems to be a bit of a hurdle internally.
So I don't have a budget item for that yet because we have to figure out what it is that we need. And we are exploring some of those options. And it's primarily software and the ability to capture the data points appear to be in a lot of places. We need a program to be able to mine some of this data. It seems to be our biggest hurdle. And we like I mentioned earlier with the patrol cars, the modem, I don't want to get into like super technical talk, but the modem in the patrol car that drives our ability to get data in and out of the patrol car, we had a lot of old ones that didn't support fast flow of data in order for us to have enough power to populate those maps. So we were able to, through some budget savings, be able to update our old cars to make a purchase of new modems. So we have that going now, and future budget contemplated in our replacement of patrol cars includes that in it already. So we're not going to be asking for anything additional because we've been able through our own means and future budgeting with the fleet be able to address those. And it's just a matter of getting them in hand, getting them in the cars, getting them programmed in order to provide that information to our officers in the field. But we need to spend a little bit more time looking at some of our other reporting systems and figuring out where the gaps are and how we're going to fill those.
Great, thanks so much. And then I had the opportunity to participate in the CIT training on the final day as a role player, and was excited to see that there were several officers as well as the front office staff that you mentioned. And I wanted to know, I realize that that's very time intensive, but within the police department, what's the plan for kind of getting as many officers through CIT? Is it, from my understanding from chatting with them, it seems as though it's a person they self-select to want to be able to participate in that. Felt like it was a really good training and would like to see more officers go through it. So curious on what the kind of training plan for that is.
So quite honestly, it is a capacity issue on the CIT side. There's only one training class per year put on by CIT Montana. And, Teresa Williams did a phenomenal job last year of getting one in the one that you attended, because we didn't have one in 2020. So that, compacted our issue with capacity. There's only so many seats in the classroom, and we have to share those with everyone around. I know Teresa, myself, Sergeant Slater from here at the police department. I know Mr. Von Lossberg is very active in that with some of the meetings that we go to. We are all looking to increase the capacity and have the ability to send more officers. One of the things that we are looking at is the ability for us to send our officers they do them down in Ravalli County, for example. If there's a seat down there that's available, we'll send someone down there to get to the training. So it's a matter of finding those seats and getting our people in there.
Great, thanks so much. And my final question, and we'll wrap up, is around, I saw that we only have, I'm surprised the number of canine officers that we had. Is that on par for a community our size? It's a personal, for a small period of time when I was growing up, I wanted to be a canine police officer. So I noticed that, and I would have suspected more that we would have had more given the community our size and the important role I think they play.
If I had everything I could ask for, I would definitely ask for a couple more dogs. But we have some other more immediate needs for us to fill before I would bring that to you.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. This was really great. Like I said, for anyone listening, this is available on the police department's website for you to go through and read in depth. And we will be hearing from the chief later on in the summer during the budgeting season, and look forward to having more updates, and would love to find a time for you to come back and talk a little bit more about the work that you're doing with murdered, missing Indigenous people. So with that, we have no further items on our agenda. We have a nice big break for Public Works at 2:10. So enjoy your lunch. Thank you for your service, and we'll be adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.